Okay, everyone. Hello, and yeah, welcome to a little review of our MIDI stuff. So I'm just going to open up a new live set. Okay, great. So open up a new live set. We hit tab, and of course today we're going to be talking about MIDI. So you can see we already have two different MIDI tracks here. So let's start by going to a folder, right? So again, on the left side here, you will see these folders. Your screen maybe looks something like this. You can add a folder, right? I've added a folder that is called sounds, right? And then I can access all my files. So I have this folder sounds, and in it I have my breaks, right? So let's take one of these breaks, find one we like. Okay, so what am I gonna do? I'm gonna just drag it in anywhere. Yeah. Now, here's the thing about these tracks. I think this has been one thing that's been slightly unclear to everyone. So basically, this main time arrangement window, right? These tracks, right? These are the tracks, and obviously each lane holds what's on that track, right? Now there's this bottom window here, and this bottom window is always going to give you additional details on whatever you double click on. Yeah, so you can see I'm clicking around right now. That's not really doing anything. But if I double click on this, oh look, now I get all of these features related to this particular clip, right? So now for an audio track, right, there's nothing really on that. But for a MIDI track can hold certain like devices, right, or certain instruments or something, right? So if I were to say, oh, we want to go look at our device or look at what's on our MIDI track, double click on that MIDI track and then you'll see what's there, right? So right now you can see if we double click on the MIDI track, it says drop an instrument or sample here. So again, to get to that, if you click other places, that's not going to be there. But if you double click on this, right, or click in this lane, right, so this track is highlighted, it will say drop an instrument or sample here. And so now we can take our break and drag it in there. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in and I'm going to create a little loop there so we can sort of just work with this section of the screen, looping, hitting Command L, of course. So now we have this here, right? And now this break is in this device. This device is called Simpler. Any audio that you drag onto a MIDI track is going to automatically be put in a Simpler device, right? You can't just drag audio onto a MIDI track, right? So the audio has to be in some sort of device. So there are other sampling devices you can use, but if you just drag something in, it's going to be put in this thing called Simpler, which is a simple sampling device. So if we hit play, nothing's going to happen. We're not going to hear anything. So the first thing that we wanted to review was how do we get sound, right? So there's a couple different steps of this. So if you ever want to like play an instrument, the first thing you've got to do is make sure that the track, right, the instrument that you want to play, that this button is red over here. This button is red. You'll see that on my screen, it's slightly like grayed out with red. That's because I have this device plugged in. You're probably not going to see that on your screen. It's going to be red or it's going to be not red. So you want to make sure it's red. Now this track is like armed, right? So if we record stuff, it will record this track, right? If we try and play stuff, it's going to play this track. Now, how do we actually make noise? Well, we can use the keys on our keyboard, right? A, S, D, A, Q, S, E, D, R, etc., right? They kind of mimic the layout of a keyboard. And to turn that on, we want to make sure that this keyboard icon up here is turned on, right? This yellow keyboard icon. So again, we want this red button here to be selected, right? And we want this keyboard, so sorry, not the word key, but this like piano looking thing, right, to be selected. Good. Now, if you hit the keys, you probably should hear something, right? So what exactly is going on here? The way you can think about it is this. Imagine you had a piano, right? What we're basically doing is we are mapping this drum loop down here, right, to every single key on that piano, right? Now, Now, what happens with each different key? Basically, the higher the key, the higher the pitch. So in the middle key of the piano, it's just going to play the break normally. If you go down, it's going to lower it in pitch. If you play higher keys, it's going to play it higher in pitch, right? So if you hit A and hold it, if you hit A and hold it, it's going to start playing through this. Now, this, of course, is if we're in classic mode here, yeah, which is the default mode. If you do a higher key, right, so if you go to L, right, you can hear that it's much higher, and because of that, it's much faster, right, because we don't have warp on. So this works as the same as our original audio, right? If we turn warp on, then it will change the pitch without changing the speed. Right, and then we start to hear some of those other interesting audio artifacts or whatever. I'm just going to turn this up slightly so you can hear it a little better, but right. Yeah, that should be pretty straightforward. So let's talk about recording before we start to talk about slice mode, because I know we were talking about slice mode before too. So how do you actually record? So you might be like, okay, I'm going to play this really cool loop. It's going to go. So there's a couple different ways to record that in. So again, we want to make sure that this is red, so we're recording on that channel. We want to have our piano on. And if I click this circular button up here, it will start recording. Now, if you want a little count in, you can go up here to the top left, and you can click on count in 1 bar on the metronome, right? If you want a metronome to click along so that you can play in time, you can click that. So let's try that, right? So I'm going to hit record. Okay, and then you can hit simply space to stop it. And if it looped around because you were recording with a loop, you can just drag out that original clip and it will still be there, because once it loops, it starts to overwrite itself. So this sounds pretty bad, but whatever. Okay, so now you have this clip, and if you double click on this clip, right, you can begin to begin to select these, and we can make them longer, or we can move them using the arrow keys, or we can even add other, clips by double clicking. If you want to get them perfectly in time with the grid lines, you can hit Command A and then Command U. That will quantize them. Again, it doesn't always work perfectly depending on some settings, but you can see that kind of snapped it to the grid there. So, for example, I had like this before, and then when I hit Command U, it changed it, so it kind of snapped to the grid lines. Yeah. Now, if you want to go back to simpler, double click on that, right? And if you want to see the clip, double click on that, and that will allow you to move back and forth. If you click elsewhere, right, then it will kind of get that stuff out of the way, and you can, move this up and down doing that. Okay, good. So I'm going to double click on this, What else did we talk about in class? Okay, so we have since we have drums, there's another mode that we could use that might be a little more useful to us. So we're going to go down here, and we are going to change to slice mode. So now you can see it's divided up by all of these lines. So basically what it's doing is at the transients, right, at these parts with these sharp spikes in volume, it's putting these different markers. And then what it's doing is it's taking each of these pieces and mapping those to the piano keys. So before, every single piano key had the same loop but at a different pitch. This time, right, it's taking these different pieces and mapping them to the different piano keys. Now, obviously, a piano has a lot of keys, right? This is only, 20 or something like that, right? So it's not going to be everywhere on the keyboard. So if you hit your keyboard now, you might potentially not hear stuff depending on what's going on. The reason is because these have been mapped to a part of the keyboard that your keys are not on, right? Obviously, your keyboard only has, it only has about an octave, right? It only has like 12, 12 notes or something like that. So because of that, we need to move to the different part of the keyboard. So if you hit Z and X on your key, right, that will allow you to change the octave, right? So you can see here, when I hit Z, Z is to go down an octave. It says your current octave now C2 to D3. If I hit it again, it's C1 to D2, right? So I'm going down, hitting Z. Then I can go all the way back up, hitting X, right? C4, C5, right? So I want this to say C1 to D2. And now when you do that, if you hit A, the first key, it should play the first sample. If you hit W, because remember, this is laid out like the black and white keys of a piano. So S is actually going to be the third one. W is going to be the second. And if you play these, you can hear these different parts of our sample. Okay, now why might we want to do this? Well, if we go back here, now here's also the thing. Remember, if you start to draw in some clips, so I'm just going to hit Command A to select all of those and then hit Delete to get rid of them. Now we have to make sure that we're drawing again in the C1 to C2 area. Yeah. So let's see if so I'm double clicking to create one of those. I'm going to drag it out. I'm going to hit Command D to duplicate. So let's start and turn this off, right? Let's start to hear what we have here. Okay, so it's playing those. So maybe let me make these all. So if you do a Shift and hold the left and right arrow keys, you can make these longer and shorter, right? So I am going to, right? So let's double click to go back here, right? So you can hear what's going on there. So now, right, since we have, so this is not going to be as useful for playing the whole thing, but now we have all these different drum sounds. So what I would do is go through and see if you can like figure out what these sounds are. Now, it might be kind of annoying. You're like, oh, do I have to switch back to this mode and then use my keyboard and figure out, oh, this is this. And then I go here and then I can see, oh, okay, I'm playing that. Okay, a little annoying. So what you can do is you can hit this headphone icon that is right here. And if we click that on, then when we move these or create new things, we'll hear what they are. So let's try and find like a kick drum. Okay, so this is a kick drum. Great. Right? I'm just clicking and dragging to select. Now let's try and find a snare. Okay, so there we go. Here we got a snare. Right? So let's draw in like a little pattern. Right? And then let's put a hat. Okay, right, so I'll put this hat in between. Maybe find another noise. Put that one. Okay, so now. Okay, and let's get a few more of our little hat thing. Maybe let's get more of these in here. Oops, sorry. Oh, God, sorry. What am I doing? Okay, there we go. Oh, why are we only hearing? Okay. So now a good question. You might be like, wait, why am I only hearing the hats here? It's because this instrument is monophonic. Monophonic means it only plays one noise at a time. So if we go back to simpler and we go to our playback, right? We want to change that to, we want to change playback to poly, right? And then you can play up to 6 sounds. So let's listen now. Right, there we go. Amazing. So that sounds cool. And then we can duplicate this and we can add some different things, or maybe let's just do like this. And maybe we can get some other sounds in there. Oh yeah, great. great. Okay, awesome. So I kind of like this bit more, so I'm just going to take that and duplicate that, and we'll just work with this, right? Okay, and so a couple other things. With these clips, right now I have 2 of them. If you want to join them together, hit Command J, and then it will make them all one clip around here. If you want to zoom in on a certain area, you can click and drag this left-hand side bar here, right? So click and drag, that will make it bigger and smaller. It's kind of like the timeline at the top, except for sideways. Right, so there we go. When you're in this mode, you may notice that if you hit spacebar to start, it will always start from the beginning, no matter where you have clicked. If you want to start from where you're clicking, hit Alt Space. So if I'm like, okay, I want to just change something over here, right? I'm like, let's do that. I just want to hear this. Right? Okay, that actually sounds okay. And get lots of little like micro sounds in there. It doesn't sound that good. Yeah, it doesn't sound that good. But okay. So yeah, that I think is pretty much it. Okay, yeah, so I think that covers most of what we're talking about in terms of just using MIDI. The one other thing is, again, if you're playing stuff in and you want to record, there's one more feature that might be good to know. So let's say, again, we have this selected red, we have our keys on, and I'm playing something. If I'm like, oh, that sounds really good, I should go record it now. You can also just hit this square button up here. Yeah, this square button, and that will just take everything you just played. Again, you have to do it kind of right after you play it. And then again, you may also have to go in and kind of find out, like, where does this start? So, right, so, okay, so it actually kind of starts here. So we'll click that, delete that. Go here, and then maybe we have to move this up a little. Oh, sorry. So actually, yeah, that's a classic thing that happens. So it can be good to just cut a certain bit here using Command E, then hit Command J to consolidate that, Command A to select all, and we can just, oh, no, it's still there. Weird. Okay, well, you can select them all with your mouth and move them over the arrow keys. Right, get them a little more in time. So that's a fun thing for getting. Then you can add to that, right? Right, you can add to that, etc. Okay, cool. So the last thing for us to talk about is, again, and I would say that's the main gist of things. That's pretty much all you really have to know. If you're wanting to know more about Simpler, we can, I will talk about that a little. So the fun things here to keep in mind are, one, sensitivity. If you're like, oh, because you know some of these, like, right, like this little slice is not really, it's not really sound like much, right? So we could turn the sensitivity down, right, so that it's just getting those really big transients. So you can do that if you want. You can also change the transposition, right? So right, and then you can control that with the warp stuff too. So yeah, we've kind of talked about that's the same as obviously with audio clips. Now, if you go to controls, there's some interesting stuff here. We have a filter here, which again, I'm not going to go too much deep into the explanation of this, but basically this is showing us all the different frequencies going from high to low, so we can use this to carve out different parts of that. So here I'll be taking away the highs. grab this yellow dot and kind of move it. If you want to change the shape, you can mess around with other shapes. Right, so now it's just giving us what's under the curve, right? So now we do have the opposite, so we're taking away the low end. That's kind of fun. Okay. And then pitch envelope, again, I'm not going to go, okay, so let's talk about this, right? So this basically, so you have volume, pan, pitch, and filter, right? So this is controlling the volume, the pitch, the pan, and the filter, but it's controlling it with this curve, right? So it's almost, imagine if you had the volume knob and you're like turning it up and then down and then up and then down and then up and then down, right? That's kind of what this curve, it's kind of having someone automatically control that parameter with this curve, right? So let's listen, right? So we can sort of get this gated effect, right? Where it's like someone turning the volume on and off really quickly. Now with most of these, you're not going to notice a difference unless you turn this R off. Don't really worry about that, what that means for now. But yeah, if you turn the R off, right, so you can hear the volume going up and down. And then this over here will let us control how fast that happens. And we can even change this type of curve. And we can use this to get it in time with our project. Right, so we can do the same thing with the pitch. Pan and filter, don't worry about as much, but yeah, so that stuff can be kind of interesting. Then the final thing is pitch envelope. Again, I'm not going to explain this too much, but you can just mess with this amount button here. Sort of give it this low body sound. Mess with the amount and the decay. So yeah, a lot of fun stuff you can do with that. Great. And then the last thing I talked about, again, this is advanced stuff. You don't need to, or actually no, you know what? I'll save that. I'll save that for later. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, message me on the Discord if you have any trouble with that. And once again, your assignment for this week is just to make, something either using breaks or MIDI. It can be a 45-second to minute-long piece, or it can be, or if you want to make 5 breaks that are all like, I don't know, 5 or 6, like under 10 seconds, right? 5 to 10 seconds. If you just want to chop up a bunch of breaks and make your own, that's cool as well. So yeah, sweet. Thank you guys.